You know that feeling.
Yeah.
Finish reading something in English and you're like,
Wow.
yes,
Yeah.
I got that. That little mental high five.
Totally. Feel a real sense of accomplishment.
But then you try to actually talk about it, or maybe use one of those new words you noticed.
And it's just gone. Blank space.
Exactly. Like hitting a brick wall. It's actually super common.
Oh, absolutely. And it's definitely not your fault or like a sign you're not learning.
Right. It's this kind of disconnect between, well, understanding and really using the language.
Precisely. Reading is fantastic for exposure. Vocabulary, grammar, you soak it up. But it's often receptive, passive almost.
Like recognizing the ingredients on a recipe card.
Yeah, versus actually being able to whip up the dish yourself.
Exactly. And that gap is what we're digging into today. We've been looking at some really helpful insights from a Speak Confident English YouTube video. It's called English Reading Practice to Be More Fluent Proven Steps for Success.
Some really solid ideas in there.
Totally. So think of this as, well, a way to help you turn that reading skill into actual speaking confidence. Our mission here is to give you some actionable things you can do.
Yeah, practical steps.
But, quick point, this isn't about making every reading session feel like homework.
Oh, definitely not. Sometimes you just want to enjoy the story, right?
Exactly. Reading for fun is crucial, too.
That's actually one of the first things the video points out, these two types of reading. There's reading just for enjoyment.
Getting lost in the plot, learning about something cool.
Right. And you are absorbing language kind of naturally without intense effort. And that's valuable. That's perfectly fine.
Absolutely. There's a real satisfaction in just, finishing a book in English. It builds that feel for the language.
It does. But then there's the other kind, reading to, actively learn.
Okay, so that's more intentional.
Yeah, that's when you might pause more, maybe take some notes, really look at new words or how sentences are put together. You're focusing on the language itself.
So enjoyment reading versus learning reading.
But they're not like totally separate boxes. You can blend them.
Ah, okay. So a good story could also be a learning tool.
For sure. It just depends on your mindset in that moment. Are you kicking back or are you actively trying to level up your fluency? Sometimes it's a bit of both.
Got it. So, okay, let's say you do want to be more intentional. You want to use reading to boost your speaking. Where do you start?
Well, the video stresses choosing the right stuff to read. It's not just about picking up any English book or article.
Right. Not all reading material is created equal for learning.
Exactly. You're looking for a kind of sweet spot.
Okay.
They don't want something so easy that you're just breezing through, recognizing everything. Your brain isn't really, work.
It's passive reading again.
Right. But you also want to avoid something that's so difficult that you're stopping every other sentence, looking things up.
Yeah, that just gets frustrating fast. You might give up.
Precisely. So the video suggests aiming for understanding about, say, 75% of the text.
75%. Okay, so that leaves...
About 25% that's new, that's challenging. Enough to stretch you, introduce new words, new structures, but not so much that it kills the enjoyment or the flow.
That makes sense. Challenging, but achievable.
And that level of challenge actually keeps your brain switched on. You're actively trying to bridge those gaps in understanding. That's where the learning happens.
The source mentions ways to find books at the right level, right? We won't list them here, but the principle is key.
Yeah, finding that just right Goldilocks level, it's crucial.
Okay. So you found your book, your article. It's in that 75% zone. Now what? How do we make sure the new words we see actually stick?
Right. Moving from recognizing to use. Let's talk vocabulary. The video has a really interesting first tip.
Yeah.
Resist the urge to immediately look up every single new word you see.
Huh. Okay. That feels a bit counterintuitive. Isn't the point to learn the word?
It is, but how you learn it matters. The suggestion is to play detective first.
Language detective. I like it.
Yeah. Look at the sentence. Look at the words nearby. What's the overall topic? Can you make an educated guess about the meaning? Is it a doing word, a thing, a description?
Try to figure it out from the context.
Exactly, because when you actively wrestle with the meaning like that, your brain actually forms a much stronger connection to that word.
Ah, stronger than just passively reading a definition.
Way stronger. Plus, think about real conversation. You don't always have a dictionary handy.
True. You have to guess from context all the time.
Yeah.
So this builds that real-world skill.
Absolutely. It trains that intuitive muscle. Okay, so after you've tried guessing, then maybe you look it up to confirm or refine. But the next step is also key, note-taking.
Right. And the video says go beyond just highlighting.
Yeah, highlighting feels productive, doesn't it? But often those yellow lines just sit there.
Guilty as charged.
Oh, yeah, me too sometimes. The idea is a more active system. Maybe use different codes.
Like,
Yeah. Circle totally new words. Underline phrases that sound useful or natural. Put a star next to a grammar structure you notice. Something like that.
okay, so you're categorizing as you go, but that's still just marking the page.
True. The crucial part, the video emphasizes, is transferring those marked items
Where?
into a dedicated notebook or a journal. Actually write them down.
The physical act of writing.
Exactly. That engages your memory differently. Write the word, maybe write the sentence you found it in.
So you have the context right there in your notes.
Precisely. You're not just memorizing a word in isolation. You're capturing how it's actually used. When you review your notes later, you see it in its natural habitat, so to speak.
That makes a lot more sense than just a list of words. Okay, another strategy mentioned was prediction before you even start reading a section.
Yeah, this one's quite clever. Before you dive into a new chapter or article section, take a second, look at the title, the headings, maybe read the first sentence or two. Ask yourself, what do I think this is going to be about? What might happen? What words do I expect to see?
I do that.
It primes your brain. It activates your existing knowledge, your vocabulary related to that topic. It's like warming up before exercise. You're getting your mental gears turning.
Like a mental preview. Okay.
And then after you read the section, you circle back.
Check your predictions.
Yeah. Were you right? What surprised you? What new ideas or words came up? And critically, can you explain what you just read in your own words?
That last part sounds key. Summarizing.
Definitely. It forces you to process the information more deeply, to retrieve it, to use the language you just encountered. It's moving from passive understanding to active recall.
Right. Okay, so we've got context clues, active note-taking, prediction, summarizing. That covers vocabulary well. What about grammar? That's often a sticking point.
It really is. People often feel like they know the rules. Maybe they aced the grammar tests.
But then using it smoothly in conversation is another story.
Exactly. The video's insight here is to shift focus slightly. Less about consciously applying abstract rules.
And more about
Recognizing patterns. Seeing how native speakers actually put sentences together in real contexts, like when you're reading.
becoming a pattern spotter while reading.
Pretty much. Instead of thinking, okay, rule 3B applies here, just notice things.
Like what specifically? Give me some examples.
Okay, well, notice how time expressions are used. Words like yesterday, last week, since 2020. What verb forms usually go with them?
Okay. Yeah.
Or look at connecting words, however, because, although, so. How do they link ideas? How do they change the sentence flow?
Sentence structure links.
And descriptive language. How are adjectives ordered? You know, a big red car, not a red big car. Or comparison phrases as tall as, more interesting than. Just notice these recurring structures.
So less about naming the grammar point, more about seeing it in action repeatedly.
Exactly. And the suggestion, again, is to note these down. Saw, since, use with this verb tense here. Or this is a common way to connect contrasting ideas.
Jotting down the patterns you observe.
Yes, because actively noticing and recording these real examples helps you internalize the patterns more naturally. It builds that intuitive feel for what sounds right.
Which helps both understanding when you read and producing it when you speak.
Precisely. It's building that implicit grammatical knowledge.
Okay, this is great. We're reading actively, picking up vocabulary, noticing grammar patterns. But the big goal for many listeners is better speaking. Fluency. How do we bridge that final gap?
This is where we turn input into output. The video covers several powerful techniques. The first one seems almost deceptively simple.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
Reading aloud.
Just reading the text out loud.
Yep. It sounds basic, but it's incredibly valuable.
Why? What does it actually do for fluency?
Several things. One, pronunciation. You're physically making the sounds, hearing yourself say the words.
Okay. Mouth muscle practice.
Kind of. Two, rhythm and intonation. You start to get a feel for the natural music of English sentences.
Yeah, the ups and downs.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, it just makes you more comfortable with the act of speaking English. It lowers that barrier, builds confidence.
The video suggests recording yourself too, right?
It does. Start with maybe just a paragraph. Record it, listen back. Don't be too critical, but notice things. Where did you stumble? What sounded a bit off?
And then try again?
And then try again. Maybe focus on one or two things to improve. That repetition really helps cement the sounds and the flow.
Makes sense. Okay, so reading aloud is step one for output. What's next?
If you want to level up, the video introduces something called shadow reading.
Shadow reading. Sounds intriguing. Explain that one.
Okay, so for this, you typically need an audiobook or some kind of recording of the text you're reading.
Got it. Audio plus text.
You listen to the audio while you read along silently first, just to get familiar. Then the shadowing part begins. You try to speak along with the recording.
At the same time.
Or just a fraction of a second behind. The goal is to mimic everything. The speaker's pronunciation, their speed, their rhythm, the intonation, pauses. Everything. You're like their echo or their shadow.
Wow, okay. That sounds challenging.
It can be. The video suggests levels. Start by just whispering along. Then try speaking at a normal volume, staying as close to the original speaker as possible.
What's the benefit of doing that?
It trains your brain to process and produce spoken English much faster. You're forced to keep up. It helps you sound more natural, improves your flow, and connects listening and speaking skills directly.
Interesting. A real workout for the mouth and brain.
Definitely. Okay, so we have reading aloud, shadow reading. What else helps turn reading into speaking?
Well, remember that summarizing point we mentioned earlier?
After you finish reading a section.
Yeah. The video really emphasizes taking a moment after reading to actively use the information. Don't just close the book.
Right. Recall the main points. Try to explain them.
In your own words. And crucially, try to weave in some of those new words or phrases you noted down.
It's like giving yourself a mini speaking assignment based on the reading.
Exactly. And the video even says, try explaining it out loud to a friend, a pet, the wall. It doesn't matter.
Yes. The act of verbalizing it is key. And don't worry about making mistakes. That's part of the process.
It forces that active retrieval and use of the language, moving it from seeing it to can say it.
Precisely. It solidifies the learning.
Okay, and then there's the final, perhaps biggest step for fluency.
Yes. Actually, talking about what you read with other people.
This seems like the ultimate practice ground.
It really is. Conversation is where it all comes together. The video suggests a few ways to do this.
Like?
Find a conversation partner, maybe someone else learning English, and agree to discuss the book or article you both read.
Okay, shared reading discussion.
Or engage in online forums. Share an interesting quote. Ask a question using some new vocabulary you learned.
Use the community for practice.
You could even get creative and role-play a scene from a book with a partner. And of course, joining an English book club is mentioned as a fantastic option.
Yeah, a book club provides that regular structure and purpose for discussion.
Exactly. When you know you'll be talking about the book, it motivates you to read more actively, and then you get that immediate practice using the language, getting feedback, hearing others.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Discussing it reinforces understanding, memory, and gives you real speaking practice.
It creates this really positive feedback loop, doesn't it? Active reading leads to better speaking, which makes you more confident, which makes you want to read and speak more.
So if we boil it all down from this deep dive, the main message from the Speak Confident English video is, reading for fluency isn't passive.
Not at all. It demands active engagement, a conscious effort to connect the words on the page to your goal of speaking better.
It's about knowing why you're reading, choosing the right stuff.
Using those strategies like context clues, smart note-taking, prediction.
Paying attention to grammar patterns, not just rules.
And then crucially, focusing on output. Reading aloud, shadowing, summarizing, and finding ways to actually discuss what you're learning.
So for you listening, maybe the question is, which one of these active strategies feels like the best first step for you?
Yeah, what could you try? Maybe becoming that context detective, starting that reading journal.
Or perhaps committing to reading one paragraph aloud each day, or looking for an online discussion about something you're reading.
It really prompts the final thought, doesn't it? What's one small action you can take, maybe even today, to make your English reading time a more active investment in your fluency?
How can you start shifting from just decoding words to really using reading as a springboard for more confident speaking?
Something to think about.
Definitely. Well, thanks for exploring this with us. We hope these ideas help you connect your reading practice to your speaking goals.
Until next time.